So let's head back and look at a topic most property investors are generally interested in: what's going on with interest rates. So right now the economic future is still uncertain. No one really knows what's going to happen with Brexit. It's still a complete and utter mess. Negotiations are just getting started and frankly no one knows. However, we've got to look at what's happening across the pond. The US Federal Reserve have increased interest rates for the second time this year, and the interest rate now in the US is 1% compared to our 0.25% over in the UK. And what we do know is that what happens in the US generally follows over here at some point in time. However, the US are being quite hawkish right now and are quite buoyant about where their economy is going. And in fact, last month, 3 members of the Monetary Policy Committee did vote to increase interest rates. The great news about the MPC is that they all have to vote in order to increase the interest rates, or there has to be a majority. Thankfully, there wasn't at this point. But what it does mean is that we have to be, as investors, looking at stress testing our portfolio and looking at if you have any duds in the portfolio that potentially, if the interest rates go up, and they will go up at some point, you start to look at divesting yourself of those. Economic growth, Bank of England says okay, but we just don't know what's going to happen with interest rates, so start thinking about it now. So now we're going to look at what's going on with house builders. So we're going to look at today Persimmon, McCarthy & Stone and also MG Gleeson, and really look at what's happened with them over the last quarter. So let's kick off with looking at Persimmon. So Persimmon, obviously a major national builder. Good thing about Persimmon is their average price of the property is $213,000. So for a lot of people, quite affordable. And they've actually seen an increase in sales in the last quarter, 8% up year on year, which for them is great news. Unfortunately, at the same time, they've also had an increase in operating margins, which is obviously an impact for them, but in terms of actual sustained growth, it looks pretty positive at this point. So let's look at MG Gleeson. These guys build affordable homes for low-income households, and they've done even better than Persimmon. They're actually 12% up in the first quarter, year on year. So they've actually delivered 1,013 more units than they did in the previous year, which means that that whole market, that low-income affordable household market, is definitely still growing, and that's, again, more positive news. Now finally, let's look at McCarthy & Stone. So McCarthy & Stone very much focus on the retirement market, and they've been impacted massively by Brexit and the uncertainty as to what is going to happen or not happen with Brexit. So they're actually down on sales, and they're down on sales sites. However, their forward sales look healthier than they did a year ago. So they're building less sites, but forward sales are up for them. So it's still fairly positive, but until Brexit's really been thoroughly hashed out and we know exactly what Brexit means, they're probably still being impacted by that. So there's still a disconnect going on in terms of people wanting to move but being hampered by various factors. The first one is homeowners generally do want to move up the housing ladder, but they're impacted by the ability of finance and also uncertainty over Brexit. The Help to Buy scheme is only available to first-time buyers, so existing homeowners can't access into that finance. And finally, for people wanting to purchase properties over £500,000, the stamp duty is so enormous it's putting a lot of people off. So with house builders and new homes being sold, we've just got to keep on watching this sector and find out what's going on, and we'll report more as we learn new results every month. So finally, I just want to end up with a little bit of a rant, so to speak, about a recent tragedy which a lot of you will be familiar with, the Grenfell Tower. What is the main story here and what is the issue? The issue is really that standards are not the same across the private rental sector and the public sector, and this has to stop. This tower was managed by the council, let out through housing associations. 80 people died. There's probably more that may die because there's 70 people still seriously injured. And this was caused by a refrigerator. And that refrigerator caused a fire, which then engulfed the building. Now, as we all know, the exterior cladding on the building was substandard. They could have actually put in better cladding, which would have cost them a couple million more, but it would have been more fire resistant. They also had issues in regards to there was only one single protected route out of the building. The people were also told to stay in their flats and not leave. They also decided to not really maintain the property in the way that they should. So 2/3 of the gas pipes were exposed. And also, when you look at what was going on with the fire systems, they weren't up to standard. They weren't working correctly. And also, it appears now that there was quotations put forward for putting in a sprinkler system, which would probably much have saved the entire building had it have existed, which could have been put in at a cost of £138,000. Now, given that they spent about £8.5 million on the refurbishment of the building, including the cladding, 138k really isn't that large amount of money really. But the main problem I have is this. As a property owner and an investor, and having multiple HMOs that I own and my investors own and we manage, my issue is this. In a HMO, which is 3 stories high, I have to put in a factory grade fire system with emergency lighting, with a fire panel, and I have to test that on a weekly basis. So my question is, what the hell is the public sector doing, being allowed to get away with not having fire systems in place, not having adequate fire precautions in place, and who is really going to step up and sort out this mess? Because right now it's unfair. What's happening in the HMO sector is that private sector landlords are being unfairly penalised because they're an easy target, and housing associations and councils are not subject to the 2004 Housing Act. So my call out there to anyone watching or listening is, what are we going to do to really bring up all of the standards in the housing sector so that both private and public sector are working towards the same standards and protecting people's lives? So that's all from us this week on Property TV. Next week we are going to be looking at a white paper we've been putting together on the HMO sector and a little flavour of some of the things that we think are going to be happening. So make sure you watch out for that. And as always, we always love to have comments, views, opinions on the show, what you've enjoyed, what you've not enjoyed, what we could do more of. So please do comment on anything that you've liked or not liked, because we really do value your opinion. So this is Matthew Moody from Property TV saying thank you for watching, and we'll see you again in the next episode very soon.